Prince William, the future King of England, has, according to some well-known insiders, just called in an emergency meeting. The reason is a question that has been circulating among royal insiders for months, a question about money, inheritance, and exactly what Camilla's position means for the future of the Crown's finances. Here is something the palace has never clearly explained to the public. When King Charles inherited the throne in September 2022, the financial machinery of the monarchy shifted in ways that were far more complicated than the official announcement suggested. The Duchy of Cornwall, a vast private estate worth an estimated £1 billion, automatically transferred to William the moment Charles became king. That part most people know. But what most people don't know is the legal grey area that Camilla's elevated status quietly introduced into the equation. As Queen Consort, and now simply Queen, Camilla holds a position that carries its own financial entitlements that have never been fully disclosed to the public. Sources close to the situation say that certain provisions within royal financial arrangements could, under specific circumstances, direct portions of estate wealth in directions that were never part of William's assumed inheritance picture. Think about that. The Duchy of Cornwall generates over £20 million annually. It funds William's household, his staff, his official operations. But the question being asked behind closed doors is this: does Camilla's legal standing as Queen create any claim, formal or informal, over assets that William considers his by birthright? Royal financial law is deliberately opaque. It is designed to be, and that opacity, Tom Bower can tell you from years of research into this family, is precisely where tensions are born. But the inheritance question doesn't stop at the Duchy of Cornwall, and this is where the story becomes significantly more complicated. William's financial position as Prince of Wales is built on a specific architecture, one that assumes a clean, uncontested transfer of assets from one generation to the next. The Duchy of Cornwall alone includes over 135,000 acres of land across 23 counties. It includes commercial properties, rural estates and investment holdings that have been accumulating value for centuries. What William's advisors are said to be examining closely is the question of survivorship rights. In the event that King Charles dies before Camilla, which, given the king's well-documented health challenges, is far from an abstract concern, what exactly does Camilla's financial position look like? And more specifically, does it intersect with assets that William considers ring-fenced for the Crown's future? Sources familiar with royal legal arrangements suggest that the current financial settlement for Camilla is more generous than anything previously extended to a queen consort in modern history. That is not an accident. Charles negotiated those terms personally, and William, according to insiders, was not fully consulted on the details. He is aware now, because for William, this is not simply about money. It is about the structural integrity of everything he has been promised since the day he was born heir to the throne. Now, let's get to the meeting itself, because this is where things get interesting. According to sources, William convened a private gathering of his most trusted senior advisors in recent weeks. Not a formal constitutional meeting, but an urgent closed-door session specifically triggered by the escalating speculation around Camilla's inheritance position. The people in that room are said to include William's most senior legal counsel, key members of his private household staff, and at least one figure with direct knowledge of royal financial law. What is notable about this meeting is what it signals. William does not call emergency sessions lightly. Those who know him describe him as methodical, deliberate, and deeply averse to reactive decision-making. But the inheritance speculation had apparently reached a point where silence was no longer a viable strategy. What was discussed in that room has not been formally disclosed, but sources indicate that the agenda covered three specific areas. First, a full legal review of Camilla's financial entitlements as Queen. Second, the potential implications for the Duchy of Cornwall's long-term financial independence. Third, and perhaps most significantly, how William's team should position itself publicly if the speculation continues to grow. That third point is important because it tells us that William is not simply reacting to a legal question, he is managing a narrative. And in the royal family, narrative management at this level means only one thing: the situation is considered serious enough to require strategic control. That is not ordinary palace housekeeping. That is a future king protecting his position. But here is what makes this entire situation more layered than it first appears. While William has been calling meetings and seeking legal clarity, Camilla has been doing something else entirely. She has been consolidating, quietly, methodically, and with a confidence that royal watchers have described as remarkable, given where she stood in public opinion just a decade ago. Since becoming queen, Camilla has systematically expanded her public profile in ways that go far beyond ceremonial appearances. She has cultivated her own independent relationships with key institutional figures, including senior members of the Church of England, leaders within the Commonwealth, and influential voices in British cultural life. She has repositioned herself not merely as Charles's wife, but as a fully sovereign figure in her own right. And she has done it, Tom Bower notes, with a sophistication that suggests very deliberate strategic intent. What is particularly striking is her relationship with the palace's communications infrastructure. Camilla's press operation has become notably more assertive in recent months. Stories favorable to her judgment, her warmth, and her institutional value have appeared with increasing frequency in outlets that are traditionally close to the palace. That is not coincidence. That is a coordinated positioning effort. And William's camp, sources say, has noticed every single move, because in the royal family, visibility is power, favorable press is currency. And Camilla has been spending that currency very deliberately at precisely the moment when questions about her financial position are beginning to surface. What's unfolding right now didn't begin with an inheritance question. That is the part of this story that most coverage is missing entirely. The tension between William's household and the broader Buckingham Palace operation has roots that go back years, long before Charles became king and long before Camilla became queen. Those who have watched this family closely, as Tom Bower has, will recognize a pattern that has repeated itself across generations. The heir to the throne and the current monarch's household are structurally positioned to be in competition. Their interests are not always aligned. Their advisors are not always speaking, and the unspoken question hanging over every interaction is always the same: who holds power now and who holds it next? But under Charles and William, that structural tension has taken on a more personal dimension. Sources describe a growing frustration within William's camp about decisions being made at the palace level without adequate consultation with the future king's office. The financial arrangements around Camilla are one example, but they are not the only one. There have been disagreements over royal duties distribution, over the future of the monarchy's public-facing reform agenda, and over how certain sensitive family matters, including those involving Harry and Meghan, should be handled institutionally. William has a vision for what the monarchy should look like. It is a leaner, more modern, more accountable institution. But the palace, shaped significantly by Camilla's influence, is not always moving in that direction, and that gap is widening. But then there is the king himself. Because no account of this situation is complete without acknowledging the extraordinarily uncomfortable position that Charles now occupies. He is a man who loves his son. He is also a man who loves his wife. And right now those two loyalties are pulling in directions that are becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile. Charles has spent decades building toward this moment. His reign, his legacy, his vision for a reformed and resilient monarchy. But he is doing it while managing a health situation that has introduced real urgency into questions about succession and longevity. Sources close to the king describe him as acutely aware of the tension between William and Camilla's respective camps, but he is also, reportedly, deeply reluctant to intervene directly. His instinct, as always, is to hope that proximity and time will smooth the edges of a difficult situation, but those who know this family understand that this particular situation will not smooth itself. The financial questions are too specific, the legal implications are too real, and William is too determined to simply wait and hope. What Charles has not done, and what sources say William finds increasingly frustrating, is sit down and provide direct, unambiguous clarity about Camilla's financial position and its relationship to William's inheritance. That silence from the king is not neutral. In the royal family, silence on a sensitive matter is always a signal. The question is, what exactly is it signaling? This is bigger than just this one meeting. What we are watching in real time is a fundamental stress test of how the British monarchy manages the transition of power between one generation and the next. The financial structures that underpin the crown are ancient, deliberately complex, and almost entirely opaque to public scrutiny. But opacity has a cost. When questions arise, as they have now, the absence of clear answers creates exactly the kind of speculation that damages institutional trust. William understands this. That is precisely why the emergency meeting happened, but understanding the problem and solving it are two very different things, because the solution requires Charles to make decisions that will inevitably favor one party over another. Either Camilla's financial position is clarified and potentially curtailed in ways that protect William's inheritance picture, or it isn't, and William is left managing an uncertainty that will follow him all the way to his own coronation. The stakes here are dynastic, they are financial, but most importantly, they are about trust, between a father and a son, between a king and his heir, and between an ancient institution and its own future. The British monarchy has survived centuries of conflict, scandal, and reinvention, but it has always done so by resolving its internal tensions before they became public fractures. Right now, that resolution has not happened. The inheritance question remains open. The meeting has taken place, but the answers have not come, and William, methodical, strategic, and increasingly impatient, is waiting. What do you think? Is William right to push for clarity on Camilla's financial position, or is this a battle that risks doing more damage to the monarchy than the original question ever could? And should Charles step in directly, or is his silence itself a form of quiet diplomacy? Let me know in the comments below.